Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Danielle Patterson, your host for today with Family Office Access, and I'm glad you're here. Today's inaugural member-only workshop is Marketing Mastery, Winning with Investors, led by Matthias Knab, founder and CEO of Opalesque, who brings more than 30 years in finance, has edited over 27,000 articles, moderated more than 400 panels, and reviewed over 5,000 fund decks.
Right.
Today, he will share his expertise with us and focus on what actually builds allocator confidence and wins mandates. I'll keep my intro to Matthias brief because he is really going to share his experience through his presentation. But before we dive in, I thought it would be very fun for you to meet a few of the faces behind Family Office Access that enable us to do what we do. So I would love to start and welcome Elisa Morris, who is Head of Client Services. She's been with us nearly 10 years and has been instrumental in our evolution from a static spreadsheet into today's dynamic platform. She's really the architect of our filter categories and leads all of the best practices and guides you see in the resources. So grateful for Elisa.
Thank you.
Next, I'm excited to introduce you all to Justice Hansen, research analyst who brings that bright, positive energy and consistently goes above and beyond on those dedicated research requests. Any of you here who are annual subscribers, that's one of the benefits. And if you've worked with Justice in this capacity, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He also helps lead the new firm editions and the meticulous maintenance of the data. Thank you, Justice, for being here today. And next, I'm pleased to introduce you to Madison Bromley, Operations and Marketing Coordinator, who helps keep us organized and make sure members feel supported from their first exploration through onboarding and ongoing success. So today they're here really to help monitor the chat and the Q&A. If you haven't yet, I have enabled the chat. I'm going to go ahead and drop my own LinkedIn in there to make sure it's working and you see it. But I encourage you all, introduce yourselves to each other. Let us know where you're joining in from. And feel free throughout the presentation to drop your questions here. I know Matthias has a lot of groundwork to cover, but if he sees a question and can fold it in while he's presenting, he will. Otherwise, all of the team will enable cameras and your ability to interact at the end of the session so that you can introduce yourselves, you can ask your questions, and we can make things a little bit more interactive. So whether you sprinkle them in the chat or save them for the afterwards, we'll make sure that we get to address your questions you have for Matthias. So this session will be recorded. We'll share the replay with everyone, and we are looking forward to running more of these in the year ahead. So feedback is always welcomed. If there's topics or expertise you'd like us to feature in the future. But with that, thank you everyone for being a part of our community. Matthias, we are so excited to have you with us, and the floor is all yours.
Right. Fantastic. So let me start and share my screen. Wonderful. Okay. So this is what we'll be talking about, marketing mastery, a guide to winning with investors, right? So it's always good to actually know a little bit more of the audience. So if you like, while I start my first slides, maybe just get onto the chat and tell me three things, right? Number one, what's the strategy that you're doing? I assume you're a fund manager. You're here to learn more about fund marketing. Number two, what is your current company AUM, right? So how big are you, right? Are you already in the institutional bracket, right? And then if you like, tell me also your biggest challenge, right? I really want to make this for you. And so the more I know, the better I can target this presentation. So I've been talking to funds and fund managers for 22 years, and it's typically two problems that they tell me. Number one, I want more meetings. Okay, can you help me get more meetings? And number two, oh, I want to actually close those meetings, right? So that's the things that I most of the time hear. And so this is also what I will be focusing on today, right? To really help you with that. Get more meetings and close more meetings. But this is a two-way street. So I have a full packed deck. I'm totally committed. I've been doing this for 22 years, but I also need you to do your job. That means to actually listen intently, use the chat, right? Maybe put something in when I encourage you to do so, or when you have a question, etc., right? And then also, take notes, right? So I can only show you something or give an idea, but you have to do it, right? So if that's fair, let's make an agreement, right? I will give everything, you will give everything, right? That means take this seriously, try it out. And the more you will try this out, you will see the more it will help you and serve you. So let's get started. So, why is this not going on? Okay, I'm actually jumping this today's lessons. You'll get the deck when we're done. I really want to be quick. I started 2003. Here we go, 2003. My wife always tells me, you need to tell people actually what happened in 2003, right? How long this is ago. So I'm jumping around here. This is a little bit slower than I thought. I need to be very carefully moving my mouse. Okay, okay. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Today's lesson, I'm jumping that. Next one. So, what are we going to talk about? We will be talking about systems, systems, and systems. And I want to start with this quote from Atomic Habits, right? I'm sure some of you will have read it. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Okay. That means we can dream up as much as we want, the whole visualizing thing, that maybe helps us to a certain degree. But very soon, it will stop because you have to start doing things. And the things that determine our output, particularly when it comes to running an investment management firm, is our systems, right? So we do not rise to the level of our goals, right? We fall to the level of our systems. That means the better our systems are, the higher our chances to success. So I've been doing this, like I said, for 2003. My wife always said, you need to explain people, right? What was the world back then in 2003? How long you had been doing this, right? So I started the first hedge fund newsletter globally in 2003, right? 2003. And so this is when I started in this industry. We still do this newsletter. We also have a yearly family office magazine, which I'm happy to send you as well. It's a free magazine. So it was Concorde's final flight and all of that. So it's crazy, right? So much has passed and I've seen so much. So what I'm saying here is I've been around. I've been around for a while. So, yeah, 22 years of Opalesque. These are all the places I've done business, right? The next slide will show you a typical year of my travel. So this is a typical year of my travel. So I've been all over the place. I do have one of the best networks in finance when it comes to connections to fund investors, fund managers, the entire fund ecosystem. When you do this for 20 years, you get the lifetime gold status, which I got 1 or 2 years ago from Lufthansa, which was really, really great because I started to travel a little bit less. Global recognition, right? You see all the big hedge funds have been reading my stuff, read my stuff, etc. And yeah, I learned a lot. So Danielle already mentioned moderated over 400 panels. I'll be quick with that. So I've also seen some of the best fund managers pitch, right? And I want to go back to this guy, John Paulson. So I heard John Paulson speak in 2006 in Dubai, pitching his biggest trade to Middle Eastern investors. And of course, the next year he made 15 billion, four of that for himself personally, and his fund investors were up 900%. I also heard Peter Thiel, because for 12 years he ran a hedge fund. Most people don't know when he sold his PayPal to eBay, he only got 60 million out of it, right? So that's a far cry from the 27 billion where he is now. And a lot of that wealth was actually accumulated in the 12 years when he was running a global macro hedge fund. So I saw him in Geneva pitching his global macro hedge fund to the Geneva-based investors. So I've seen some of the best, and I've seen, of course, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small managers, right? And as a small manager, right, you really need to know where you are. Okay, so this is what I'm showing here. You need to know where you are. You're basically one of these guys. There are currently 25,000 GPs trying to raise money. Okay, so it's probably much more than on that picture. Asset raising is a triathlon. It's a long race requiring you to master several disciplines where you're racing against a lot of other folks. Okay, now that's a big downside, right? In asset raising, there is no silver and there's no bronze, right? There's only gold or nothing. It's totally binary. Either you get the ticket, right, or you don't, right? So it's only one place, right? And of course, you want to be the number one. So Danielle mentioned, I have a library of 5,000 decks. I'm on the distribution list of many fund managers, etc. Right? This is the AUM of a typical small manager, right? And it's just like this, not a lot of movement, right? And of course, that's a pity. And I want to examine why that is. Now, let's use the chat again. People, wake up. I have a question for you. Do you remember 2018 when Amazon was starting the quest for the second headquarter? Okay, you remember that? I mean, it was a big thing. I mean, over 200 cities, right, basically put their arm up. Okay, I want to be on. Then this was whittled down to 20 finalists. Okay, and now let me show you who actually won and also why. Okay. So the second headquarter, as you will maybe recall, was basically split between two locations. And the interesting thing is, both of these locations were within a 20 minutes drive of Bezos' homes. Okay. So what does that mean? Right? So my theory is something we have to think about. Maybe this whole pitching thing is a pretty rigged game. Okay, so this is something to think about, because in the end, we have no idea what is really going on, what we are up against, which decisions have already been made, what are the hidden forces, right, we're up against. We have no clue. So maybe pitching is rigged, right? But we have no clue. But my theory is there's also one way out, okay? And this is number two on this slide, right? Make sure you have the unfair advantage actually before you pitch. So pitches are mostly won even before you present, okay? And my working theory is the only way to get around that is to position yourself as the expert, right? You have to be the expert and you have to be known for one thing. And ideally, right, everyone knows this positioning before you're actually asked to pitch. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky because so many people are already on the road with way too generic descriptions. Oh yeah, we are mid-market private equity. Yeah, we do private credit. Oh, we are a US long-short equity hedge fund or whatever, right? So these are massive categories with thousands of other funds doing the same stuff. You have to whittle this down and really think hard. How can you frame the thing that you do in a way that it sticks with the investor's mind, right? And he sees you as the expert. So you have to be distinctive, not just better. You have to be very, very clear standing for one thing, be known for one thing, ideally the one thing that nobody else knows. Okay, so here's the problem, right? For established alternative investment managers with strong track records, you might expect 20 to 30 initial meetings to secure one allocations, right? And you have a 3 to 6 month sales cycle, right? From first meeting to commitment. Or this is if you're really, really established, right? For emerging, for the smaller managers, the whole situation looks very, very different. Okay, you look at the 9 to 18 month sales cycle, right? 50 to 100 meetings might be required for one allocation, right? 50 to 100 meetings. Woo, right? So this is what I call the small manager dilemma, right? No one wants to invest in a small manager, but everyone wants to invest in a great small manager. Okay, so the question is, how does a fund manager now prove that they are a great fund manager? This is my friend Brian Johnson. He also helps emerging sub-institutional hedge fund managers raise assets. And he says most managers he comes across sub-institutional, right, do not have a structured and disciplined and focused marketing process. They do not articulate well. I have to see how I can you guys maybe stop the camera because it totally blocks my screen. Justice, Elisa, Madison. It's weird. Let me, yeah. Okay, now, right, exactly. Now I can read my own screen, right? So most managers do not have, right, this structured, disciplined, focused marketing process, right? And they do not articulate not only their process, but they also need to articulate still the ability to to generate sustainable alpha, right? They need to express their enterprise-wide processes, operational strength, execution blueprint, right? And they need to do that to the right investors, right? So here's another quote. You can see that later, but I want to stop here briefly. So Don, a dear friend of mine, he's one of the most established fundraisers for hedge funds. I mean, he has raised billions and billions, and he continues to do so. And he made some really interesting remarks, right? Performance is only 20% of why investors invest in a fund. Okay, so hey, let's use the chat again. What do you think are the other 80%? Okay, if past performance is only 20% why investors invest in a fund, what do you think is the other 20%? Did you get a message? Make a chat, make a guess. Danielle, go first. Come on, lead this group. What do you think is the other 80%? One new message. Future performance. Yep. Yep. The opportunity and story. All true. But not quite. Relationship, the team, etc. I want to tell you, you're all good. You're all very close. That's all a part of it. But what the investor is really looking for, what the investor really needs to have is one thing, confidence. Okay? And that includes, of course, confidence in what you guys said, in the team, in the future returns, right? So not just past returns, the whole thing should work also in the future. But it all boils down to this one thing, which is confidence. And interestingly, confidence is an emotion, okay? It's an inner conviction. So, and there it gets really, really interesting. How do we get a stranger, an investor who doesn't know anything about us? How do we get this guy to the point that he has actually conviction, that he puts us in front of his investment committee or that he signs us a check, right? It's confidence. And then he said, Don, coming back to Don, he said another interesting thing. The top asset gathering funds raise 4 times more money than the top performing funds. Okay, um, I need to read this again because we need to really, really get this into our brain because it's totally not intuitive. So Don says the top asset gathering funds raise 4 times more money than the top performing funds. That means the top performing funds, from a performance perspective, are actually outperformed on a capital raising perspective by the top asset gathering funds. So the top asset gathering funds are not necessarily the top performing funds, often to the contrary. So the top asset gathering funds do a few things differently. And that also implies that performance is not everything. Okay? And that's a nice slide I always show, right? So in hedge funds, this is an area I know very well, right? So 15, 20,000 hedge funds, etc., right? So even if you're in the top decile, right, with 15,000 funds, you're still competing about 1,500 others, okay? So performance is totally irrelevant in the end, right? It gets you the interest, it gets you the interest, but it doesn't get you the money. To get you the money, the investor needs to have this confidence. So we'll look into that. How do you get to the place that the investor actually has this confidence? Right. So now we look at how does a manager actually operate, right? What are the things he does well? What are the things where he actually lacks? So every manager knows I need to come up with the numbers, okay? Nobody's going to look at me if I don't have the numbers. So the foundations on the top, you see, this is actually foundational, okay? So you need to have it, right? Operations as well. We all know we need to have the right service providers, right? And this is non-negotiable. And the things where most managers struggle, because this part is always deferred. Yeah, I'm going to look at it later. Yes, I'm going to clean up my deck later. Yes, I'm doing the sales training later. Or yes, I really think about my integrated intelligent market strategy. I do it later. So this part is mostly neglected, right? And it really shows, right? 9 out of 10 managers fail to grow over 100 million in assets, right? And the primary reason why managers do not get over that hurdle is really not because of poor performance, but because of poor marketing. And poor marketing is a result of poor focus. Okay, that's another of my theories, right? But I've seen it again and again. You can have a great performance, right? But if you don't have a good marketing, the assets don't come. But this is another thing that people think, right? People think, oh, you just need to build it and they will come. Okay. But the truth is nobody will come because funds need to be sold. Okay. So, but the good news is you can change your focus. Okay. You can commit. Okay. But you have to have a strategy for it, right? You really have to learn and learn from the best. So this is basically what I've done, right? For 22 years, I really looked at those people who've become billionaires, right? I mean, I know people who started as an average fund managers and they ended up as billionaire. Okay, and it all starts with your distinct positioning. So, what are the 5 early mistakes that lead to a fund's early death, right? The managers are not realizing they are starting a business, okay? So this is very important. You start a business. You have to be good in many different things. The number two is thinking the allocation process is all about performance. Oh, I'm going to put my numbers into a database and look how good my numbers are, and people will find me. No, they won't come, right? Third one is, this is what my friend Brian Johnson calls chasing the institutional unicorn, right? You running after institutions who will never invest with you because you are too small, right? Number four, underestimating the length of the runway. It always takes longer. If you market to institutions, right, you have to count with a 3-year runway, right? And the fifth mistake is really not investing in sales, not having a marketing strategy. So I have a solution for that. We'll also email that. This is the way out. So this is something that I put together. It's called the capital raise ladder. So you need to know exactly where you are, right? Because again, looking at hedge funds, the average AUM of a hedge fund who actually gets an institutional allocation, the average AUM is 320 million. Okay, so if you're under 320 million, it's hard, right? If you're under 100 million, it's totally unusual, right? Only the guys who have an emerging manager program will invest with you. So if you are a sub-institutional manager, you have to focus on the sub-institutional clients, okay? If you are getting institutional, if you're about to get, or if you are 100 million plus, then you can go after the institutional segment, right? So, and we will actually show you how to crack that market on the last slide, okay? I really have to make sure I have somebody to talk to at the end of this webinar. So we're now getting more into the nitty-gritty of everything, right? So 8 guerrilla tactics for a better pitch deck, okay? So A pitch deck, a good pitch deck always has the interest of the investor in mind, right? So it's not really about how great you are. It's about, right, how well you do in an allocator's portfolio, right? The benefit for the investor. So the always you have to answer on the first slide, right, from the eye of the investor, what do I get, right? What's the offer? What's the benefit? What's the value, right? What do you offer me? Slide 2, why should I trust you? What's your credibility? Why should I give you the money and not the other guy, right? So here, show your proofs, your track, your big wins, etc., right? But don't make the mistake already on page 2 to put all your 50 people or 10 people in very detailed CVs, etc., right? Don't overwhelm them. Put the slide with the team at the back when people are already sold. Here, you highlight your credibility on a very high level, okay? And number 3 is one idea per slide. You need to keep it simple, okay? Avoid confusion. Don't overwhelm. So I'm doing deck reviews, right? I did a deck review recently and I saw a totally confused, overwhelmed deck. I said, gosh, you've got way too much information, right, in each of those slides, right? You really have to keep the idea, one idea per slide. What you want is that the allocator looks at your slide, understands it, and agrees to it. So with every slide, you want the allocator to give you a nod, okay? Every slide, a nod. Yes, I get that. Yes, I understand that. Yes, that looks good. Okay, next. Yes, that looks good. Yes, I get this. Yes, I know this. Yes, this looks good. Yes, yes, next, next, next. Yes, yes, yes. So in marketing psychology, you build what's called a yes letter. Okay, one yes to the after the other until at the end, right? When it's about, can we have another meeting or are you interested? Can I send you my deck and do you want to monitor us, etc. Then the yes is much easier. And you don't get the yes if you confuse people. Then people go into resistance. Okay? Now, the reason why this guy had such a confusing deck and he basically let his pants down, he said, I think I know why. Because, I was writing this deck up on a Word file and then I was just hiring a guy from Fiverr. And these guys, they charge per deck, right? So I thought I need to condense this to 5 to 10 decks, right? So this is why I have this convoluted decks, right? Instead of working with a professional who really knows investor psychology and everything, right? And so this was a very bad financial decision. So, right, so he was saving a couple of dollars, but he thinks he can run around with a deck and collect hundreds of millions and dozens of millions, right, with a deck that absolutely does not work because he didn't apply the proper process and because it didn't understand the basics of marketing. And let me tell you here also another thing, because we know how to put up a headline and how to put in the bullet points, right? And how to change the font in PowerPoint. We know how to do a deck. No, we don't. Okay. Except if you have really studied it. And this is why, the best funds, the best asset gathering funds, okay, they have really experts who help them, okay, who really come up with a story with the right sequence, with the right look, with the right design, with the right story. And they enable the allocator to have this experience. Yes, I get it. Yes, I get it. Yes, 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 this looks good. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So there are simple tricks how to do that. Enable a flow experience with a good fixed template. So really make sure that the whole template is fixed and only the content moves. Okay. Whenever you change the layout, the colors, the bars, whenever you do an abrupt change, you are confusing the subconscious mind of the watcher, right? Of the allocator, right? The subconscious mind will getting confused. What's this color now? Why is this bar here and not there, etc.? Ooh, no, keep it simple. One fixed template, and you just move content to content. And that brings the allocator into that flow experience. And he's just focusing on one idea at a time, okay? And you can have this connection with him while you present. So emotion, right? This conviction thing is an emotion. So show visuals, photos early to spark emotions, right? And then chart and data support that emotion. So here's another secret. Hey guys, I think we will run over, okay? So if you think this is helpful, clear up your calendar. We may run over, okay? Because I'm telling you now another secret that nobody knows, really nobody. Only, I don't know, right? One of 1,000 managers, right, has the knowledge about what I'm going to tell you now. The best decks of the decks, the very, very best, they know that they have two layers in their pitch deck, two storylines, right? One is for the mind. This is all the data, all the graphics, all the tables, all the numbers, all the charts, all the logic, okay? This is here. Underneath, this is under the iceberg, you also have a storyline that you develop, that you think about, that you create, right? That addresses the emotion, right? And ideally leads the investor to the point of conviction. So two storylines, rational, emotional, okay? And be aware. And the best decks of the decks, right? They feed both channels. Left brain, right brain, right? Logic, emotions, certainty, conviction, okay? Right. Visuals, photos are really good for this emotional thing. Of course, also stories, examples, anecdotes, right? Also good for the emotional arc, right? Follow a clear arc, problem, solution, plan, payoff, right? Another thing, another really important thing, help investors retrieve your marketing materials, right? This is called nomenclature, okay? So you call it, the ABC fund, Q1 2025, ABC fund Q2 2025, right? Whatever it is, make it easy for the investor to jump on his computer. Imagine the guy is in a meeting with an investment committee, right? And they discuss your fund. And then the guy realizes, oh gosh, I really don't have the latest tear sheet. I don't have the deck. I don't have the white paper. And he goes onto his computer and he frantically hits the search bar and he doesn't find it because it's a random name, right? Nomenclature. How do you call the things? Make it easy for the investor to retrieve. Okay. Now, here's another thing. Um, what I call the guerrilla tactic. A very subtle but very powerful tactic, right? Where at the end of the presentation, find something to end on a feeling, to end on a positive note, right? Don't just fizzle out, contact us, whatever. Think of something that spices up and that maybe gets in the allocator's memory. And watch me how I do this today, okay? If I don't forget, I will do this today. Right. So you cannot really underinvest in a good deck, right? Look at that. This is what a um, family of a friend of mine says, right? You cannot underinvest, right? It's as important as the investment strategy, right? So there are 13 reasons why your deck is mission critical. I'm really jumping that. I'm just leaving one thing. I'm discussing one thing. If you're out of the room, if the meeting is over, right, what's left? The meeting minutes and your deck. Okay, so the deck becomes the proxy for you for everything. The proxy for your team, for your track, for your investment philosophy, for your past returns, the future returns, etc. So heck, you need a really, really sharp deck. Okay, and don't do it yourself. Okay, I mean, you can, but most of the decks that I've seen in the do-it-yourself method are too weak, right? Because you're competing for attention, right? So today you're competing. Attention is the number one, is the rarest currency. I think it's even more worth than Bitcoin, right? You're competing for attention. And then if you have the attention, you really have to deliver at the highest level, right? And the deck is so easy, so easy. You have to study it a bit, okay? Learn from the best, right? Take notes, look through this deck again that you'll get after the webinar, and take some time to really work on it because it's super, super important. This is another thing that's also important. It's not only the deck, but also how you present, okay? How you pitch. Now, read this. I think this is very important. I represent a lot of managers, some that are outstanding, and they have not taken advice on how to present. I'm sitting in meetings and I'm just dying because they are imploding. They think so. Don is a third-party marketer, and he has been doing this. Well, first, he was a marketer for Bank of America, for Merrill Lynch, etc. This is where he built his client network. And then he started his marketing firm, H Grove Partners, and has been marketing, I don't know, for almost 20 years now. And because he's sitting on such a big Rolodex and because he's picking really good funds, etc., he's done an outstanding job. So he really knows what he's talking about. So he says, I'm sitting in meetings. So he picks all these great managers who have all the great performance, have great operations and everything, but he's still dying because they are imploding. The meeting just doesn't work. They think they are doing a good job, and I know there's no chance that we are going to get any money from this investor. So a totally botched meeting, right? Now, this is what Don's saying, right? So there's no reason to spend all this money on hiring a big investment team and an office and all these analytics and doing all this stuff and not spend a little time fine-tuning your presentation, which could be the difference between getting a lot of assets and not getting a lot of assets, right? And here the presentation means actually the pitching, right? Those 20, 30 minutes, right? Those 1 hour Zoom calls, whatever. There is a logic to that. There are success secrets in there, but you need to know them. But that's that third triad, your operations, everybody is clear about it. Performance, everybody's clear about it. But where do you go when you really want to step up from a sub-institutional to an institutional manager, right? So I may have a solution for you, right? So you really have to focus on that because otherwise you're flying blind, right? You think you're doing all the great job and you're mailing all these people and you try to get meetings, right? But it's not working out because you actually don't know what's missing. Okay. Next, what's the number one allocator turn off in pitches, right? It's when, and again, I know this from investors, right? So I ask investors, so I'm in Geneva, right? I just been to Zurich at the family office conference, right? Next week I'll go to Abu Dhabi to a big conference. I'll go to a family office conference in Riyadh, beginning of December. So all the time I sit down with investors. So I can ask them anything. So I asked them, well, tell me what are managers doing right and what really upsets you, right? And the one thing that upsets them is, the IV or our talk when a guy comes and it's basically, a one man or a one girl show. It's all about them and not about the investor, right? Because what the investor is looking for, right? Can this guy be my partner? Okay. Can I actually give this guy money, right? And be assured he's working for me in my interest, right? Because I want a return on my money, right? Do we have a partnership, right? So if you come and start a presentation with IV, my fund, my strategy, this, and this is what we have done, that's a bad start. So you have to change your mindset, right? So the investor is the hero, not your product. You have to step back, right? Think about the investor first, right? So don't pitch your thing, but how your thing helps the investor, okay? So biggest mistake I see, investment managers over-focus on their decks and under-focus on connections, right? So I have a course here, Fund Manager, the tools, right? We go into that. So what I have designed is really a sequence of 27 videos. And Danielle said I should really offer you a special discount on price. So I have a special super offer and we do a new class for it, etc. But I'm going to speak to that at the end. But if you have the impression, right, this could be a little bit overwhelming, yes, I want to pack as much as possible in this 1 hour that we have together, but I want to also give you the assurance that if you want to do this step by step, right, and if you want to have supervision and certainty that you're actually doing the right thing, right, we can work together even after this webinar, right? So here's another thing that's super, super important, right? You have to work with this one-shot mindset. The one-shot mindset means every meeting counts, every webinar counts, right? Every conversation counts, right? So this is what my friend Panayotis says, right? So he runs the emerging manager pocket, right, for the employees retirement system of Texas. And he says there are only 250 trading days in a year, and you may get only one shot in one calendar year to speak to us, given the voluminous amount of meeting requests, right? If at all, if at all. Maybe you have only one shot and he will never look at you again, etc., right? So you may have only one shot. And here I want to tell you another anecdote because I think this is really, really important. So I also do once a month, I do webinars. So I've been in the space for 22 years. I have a fantastic penetration in the sub-institutional and institutional universes, etc. So once a month, I give a manager the opportunity to basically present and pitch and educate about their strategy once a month. Okay. And because that works so well and the managers raise money, right? Sometimes the same manager comes back after 6 months, after 1 year, etc., and do this exercise again. So I've had managers who've done this for 7 times, seven times, because I've been doing webinars since 2008. Now, I've seen a manager do a terrific job. I mean, I was so proud, okay, because I'm the host, right? I organize everything, I advertise it, etc., right? And the presentation was so smooth, it was so educational, it was one of the best. Okay, manager comes back 8 months later, it's the same fund, it's the same manager, okay, it's the same strategy, right? But the presentation was absolutely bombed. It was nowhere where it should have been and where it was. And this is why I'm telling you people, right? So if you talk to a guy, no matter if you have any private circumstances, right, that could bother you, if the market has turned against you, etc., you still need to have this conviction in yourself. Okay? You need to have still this conviction in yourself and keep this one-shot mindset and be really there, prepare and deliver. Okay? Super, super important. So here's another mind change that I recommend. So in our industry, right, fund management, right, we even talk about it. Oh, we need more sales. Okay. Oh, I need to pitch my fund and win this investor. I need to sell my fund, right? So we see this transactional. Okay. I need to sell my fund. How does an investor, particularly an institutional investor, right, who's writing 25, 100 million or even bigger tickets, how do they see this? They see it as completely different. They see it, I'm going to hire this manager, okay? Uh, I want to have, I don't want to rotate my managers every 6 months. I really want to do a wise selection. I really want to pick managers, right, where I have the confidence that they will also perform in the future, right? You mentioned that in our brief survey, right? Future returns. I want to have the confidence, right, that he works for me, that he has a partnership, right? And so the allocator is looking to hire a manager, okay? It's a bit like dating. So he's looking at a totally different set of tests than transactional. Oh, I just have to win this business. But this is dead wrong. And you're basically self-sabotaging yourself. You can change this very easily by going into your meetings, all your meetings, not I'm going to sell my fund, but You have to tell yourself, I'm going to interview and consult with this investor. Okay? You want a dialogue. You want questions. You want the other guy to talk. You want to learn. Okay? So, from your thing to their benefit. So this is a very simple exercise. Go through your website, go through your pitch deck, go through your write whatever white papers, right? And whenever you write we, our, my, you, right? Change to you, okay? So, right? Don't talk about our fund, but try to express what this means for you as the investor. So be very cognizant of your language, right? So try to step up your 30-minute pitch from a standard lecture, right? You talk and the guy listens, to a dialogue, to a conversation. And this is basically where the top 1 or 2% have masters, right? So those are actually not great presenters, not great pitchers. They are great and skilled conversationalists, okay? So, and I even try to do this here by asking you a question now and then in the chat, right? So let's do that. Now again, do you agree? Do you think that makes sense? Well, people give me a yes. Do you think this makes sense for you? Are you still there? Okay, use the chat. Show me you're there. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay. So, 3 steps to transform your pitch from conference. That means a one-way talk to a dialogue. Okay. So number one, go through your presentation and define suitable breakpoints, okay? Because every 5 to 8 minutes, people drop off, they snooze off, they lose attention, right? And you have to win their attention back. The easiest way to win their attention back is to ask them a question and have they speak, right? So go and design intelligent questions. Go through your deck and find the breakpoints where you can actually stop presenting and you ask a question, right? How do you see this? Have you ever done this, right? Have you seen something like this before, right? What do you think about the opportunity set, right? Think of questions that you can use. So every 5 to 7 minutes, right? Break and let the guy talk. And then my third recommendation is create a system that makes sure you do this. So you have to remind yourself because, we go on autopilot. Oh, you're an investor. Let me tell you about my fund. Okay? Or the guy maybe doesn't even want to listen to it, but this is the automatism that we have. Oh, you're an investor. Let me tell you about my fund, right? So we have to create a system that makes sure that does this. Okay? All right, then some of the stuff that we do are very complex. Let me give you a very simple trick, okay? So whenever you introduce something complicated, a new concept, something intellectual, right? Immediately have it followed by an example, okay? Immediately, right? Because, right, this is how the brain learns. The brain is exposed to new information, then the brain always tests. Have I seen this before? Do I believe this? Does this make sense, right? Or does this not make sense? It immediately questions every new information and it sorts the brain. Can I confirm this, right? So you can basically help out by already given the allocator, yes, this makes sense. Yes, this exists. Here's the example, right? So keep that in mind. Very simple, super, super powerful. Now, this is how the top funds develop their marketing. They basically use something what I call swarm intelligence, okay? So that means swarm intelligence means everyone gets together and said, remember at the beginning I said, find the one thing that you can really use to show the world what you do is unique and different. There is something that's different about you guys. And you need to find that. You need to define that. You need to find the right words about that. You need to find the right context about that, right? And then continue using it. And so this is one example to use swarm intelligence. Swarm intelligence is really everyone in the room, okay? So simplify the message, right? Remember the guy who is having your meeting And then he takes all the notes and looks at the deck, but then he has to present your position to the chief investment officer, to the family office principal, to the next gen, to the investment committee, whatever, right? If you simplify the message, right, make it easier for him. Good. Okay. Investors buy confidence, right? We had that. Okay. Now, I mentioned that briefly with that one shot, right? So this is a little bit overlap here. I'm encouraging people really, really to be aware of their state. Okay? State management. This is a learned skill. Your state affects your outcome, right? I mentioned that the same fund, the same facts, different energy, different outcome. Don't let emotional leakage happen, right? Right? We need to be able to manage our state, manage our emotions. And this is a trainable professional skill. Okay, we have to be aware of it. There are, right? Navy SEAL things and tools and techniques about them, breathing techniques, visualization techniques, very easy to find. But you need to be aware when you're using it, when you need to using it, when you're not there to perform at the highest level, okay? And this is the highest level, right? I really want you not to forget this session, right? And not to forget this point, right? Because this presentation, again, we may have only one shot in one calendar year, 250 days, right? Panayotis Lampopoulos, right? Remember that. So if you talk to the guy, if you have the Zoom meeting, if you have even this elevator pitch, right? You have to be there. You have to rehearse and you have to perform like an athlete every time, no exception, okay? Because it's a totally wasted and spoiled opportunity. So think of an athlete, think of an opera singer, think of a theater actor, right? Who is every evening or once a week in front of an audience, right? And he has to be there every time, deliver at the highest, right? Or a Michelin star cook or whatever, right? They have to deliver, no cheating. Okay. Now, now we are in the meeting, okay? We did all the work. We are in front of the allocator, right? So how can we maximize our limited face time with the investor? So number one, we always have to assume basically that the investor is fully invested. Okay, so this is another mind shift because we think this is an investor, right? Oh, they must be sitting on millions and billions, right? Here we come. Here's my fund. Like it? Yeah, go ahead and invest, right? Why don't you give me a check? No, 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 right? Um, they have to wait for the right opportunity. Most of the institutional allocations are replacements, okay? Right? So either a manager doesn't perform well, okay, or an investment has come to the end of the life cycle, okay, private equity, whatever, okay. So, but assume the investor is fully invested, okay. Before you actually go and meet the guy, research the institution, research the investor, find out as much as you can. What have they done? What have they invested before? Try to talk to other people, right, who have sold stuff to them, etc. And here's another thing you should, right, keep in mind. This is what investors also tell me. So don't do this name dropping. Okay, yeah. So you have a meeting with an analyst, okay, and he's part of the team. He's an analyst. But people, this guy is your entry point. This guy, okay? And you need to talk to the guy and have a relationship with the guy and connect with that guy. And it doesn't help if you do some name dropping. Yeah, you also know the chief investment officer and you went to school and your kids with those kids. No, 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 okay? It's always human because we want to try to establish a familiarity, okay? But here with professional allocators, it backfires because it gives the guy the message that he's not important, right? And you want to get through to this institution, right? Through your other connections, right? And not through him. So you absolutely have to respect this guy and absolutely don't do any name dropping at all. The guy you meet, he is the door opener. People told me, right, if there's too much name dropping and this and that, you may get a courtesy meeting, right? You may get a meeting because, their chief investment officer told them to meet you, okay? So you will get a meeting, but you won't get the assets. No name dropping, okay? Number 4, first impressions last forever. How you dress, how does your briefcase look like, right? How do your notes look like, right? Are they, scrambled or whatnot? Everything needs to be clean. Everything needs to be professional. And here's another thing. You absolutely need to know your deck. Okay, so if he's asking you a question, and they do all of this on purpose, okay, the more institutional the investor is, you have no clue, right, how they are scanning you, how many test questions they will put in front of you. You will think this is just a question. No, it's not. It's probably a test question, and they have used these test questions in dozens and hundreds of other meetings. They're sitting on libraries of hundreds of meetings, okay, and they will X-ray you. So they will ask you a question about, oh, can we go through again, your risk management process or the investment philosophy, or how do you do this, and where's again the chart with the governance? Okay. If you go to the table of contents, oh yeah, one second, not good. But what does it show? Okay, you don't know your stuff. You have had maybe just a few meetings. You have to know your deck, page by page. So if the guy says, show me again your governance structure, right? Show me this. Boom, page 20, page 12. You have to know. Okay. That's professionalism. And this is the level how you will be screened. Because those guys, they have two buckets, investable and not investable. And once you are in the non-investable bucket, once you are in the doghouse, it's almost impossible to get out. Almost impossible. It will take years. Okay. So the investor's hidden agenda is actually not to invest in you. The investor's hidden agenda is to find anything to turn you down. Okay? That's the pure truth, right? Because these people are totally inundated, right? So they have every week, they have to review their existing invested from fund managers. They have to review the guys they are monitoring, and then they have to review all the incoming stuff, and then they have to review the things that the management tells them to review, etc. Totally inundated. Okay, so they want to be quick, they want to be efficient. If they are confronted with a new opportunity, they always look for, in the first place, what's wrong? What, how can I shoot them down? Right? Why are they uninvestable? So that's the hidden agenda. And that's why you need to be so professional and you need to prepare for everything. Now, here's something that I've done with a fund manager that I've coached, okay? Because what happens is the other thing that you don't want to do is if the allocator comes with, a fairly normal and regular question, what you don't want to do is, oh, I'm sorry, I have to come back to you about it. Yeah, I have to look it up in the office. No, 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 right? Not good. You have to be qualified, and this is why allocators typically like the portfolio manager in a meeting rather than a product specialist. Okay, so you have to be able to answer 99% of all questions. Okay, because these things could also be a test. So the thing, I'll have to come back to you about it. Okay, you have to prepare. There's a very easy way to prepare. Okay, so you upload your presentation to the AI and says, "Oh, I'm going to meet," but it needs to be, a paid AI, so they need to really, really work hard for you. And secondly, you have to turn memory off, right, so that your deck isn't being used in other ways. So you can upload your deck and then ask the AI, I'm going to see an investor tomorrow, right? Give me 40 questions I should prepare for, right? That an institutional allocator could ask me to put a hole in my stomach, right? Give me 40 questions. So I'm sharing this because this was just so overwhelming. So 40 questions came back, divided in 8 different areas, right? And all very good questions, right? And really, really helpful. So this is a trick because that thing, I have to come back to you, is not the ideal answer to an investor, okay? So the final and most important investor consideration is can we work with them? Do we like them? Can we present them to our clients? Okay? Do they have a partnership mindset? Or do I have the feeling it's all about them? All right? So this is what we call the invisible test, right? Where it's about personality and culture. Okay? 7 quick wins. Use humor. Okay? Use humor. With humor, we pass the human test, right? So this is like, well, cross all the human beings and the traffic lights and whatnot. Right? If we use humans, right, we build a bridge. And the guy realizes, okay, he's a nice guy, he has humor. The best jokes are the jokes you make about yourself. Okay? Also write that down. Okay? Don't, no politics, no whatever. Okay? Nothing. Make a joke about yourself. Okay? Develop an acute fatigue sensor, right? Notice when the investor stops being receptive, when they lean back. Okay? And then what do you do? Of course, you pause and you ask a question, right? Another quick win. Ooh, people, right, run around without business cards. Don't do that. I mean, even today, and until you've done the iPhone and the NFC bump and whatnot, and the WhatsApp code, and then you need to click save, and then people actually forget to click save, etc. No, at the same time, you can swap 10 business cards, okay? At least, right, you can swap them, and if the guy has one, he will reciprocate and give it back to you. So don't be digital only and modern, etc. Bring and exchange business cards. Design effective tear sheets. So I've seen tear sheets without an address. Okay, I've seen tear sheets who didn't add up the year performance, right? It had everything from January till December, but what did they do in 2024? I need to put up the calculator and do it myself, right? So you really have to do and take a second look, right? So prep your office for visits. If an investor comes, make sure it's visit ready because, hey people, the allocator, they will look into your waste paper basket, right? They will really x-ray everything. Needs to be tidy, welcoming, professional. Second opinion can help, okay? Another thing, right? Because we always, the third triad, operations, business development, we always put it into somewhere. No, no, no. My suggestion is have a weekly review and goal setting session. Who of you is doing this? Let's use the chat again. People, are you still here? Are you still awake? Who of you is doing a weekly goal and review session? Or who has heard about it? Okay, we probably have all heard about it and we should be doing it, right? But please, 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 this is super efficient. I typically do this on Sundays and I plan for the rest of the week. Super effective. And then if you plan time for the fund marketing, you have to schedule it like a doctor's appointment, okay? So this really, you can't wiggle, okay? So there are 3 ways. I talked a lot. We're basically out of time, already 5 minutes over, right? There's something called the collector's way, right? How do you do this information, right? So you collect it, you put it on the shelf, you don't do anything with it, right? Or, right, there's the pioneer's way, right? So you take it and you try everything on your own, right? But there's also something called the navigator's way, right? Which is you use the maps which are drawn by those who have already made a journey, avoiding dead ends and finding the shortcuts that they marked along the way. So this is what I'm offering. So this is what Danielle told me I should include in this webinar because I do have a very unique offering that can take you, let's say, in 3 months. It's 27 videos. It's 6 hours of these videos. You complete all those 6 steps, right? From laying the foundation. Um, it's 10 tutors, average 30 years. You see Brian Johnson, you see Don Steinbrück, all the others, etc. It's 92 workbook pages, and this is really the key. It's not just videos, because there are great TED Talks, great YouTube videos, right? But they don't really guide you to transform your shop. What I've created here is, and Danielle checked it and she recommends it, is, it's the workbook pages. So here you take the content, everything, for example, everything that we discussed today, right? But then you actually follow through, right? And then if you do the one-on-one thing, right, I will coach you, you will send me your worksheets, etc. And I will make sure you stay on track, right? So you'll perfect your pitch deck, execute the cost-effective marketing strategies. It will help you find the right investors. Remember when we talked about this capital raise letter? So this is one of the biggest mistakes. People try to talk to institutions because it feels so great to talk to institutions and walk into these buildings where hundreds of millions and billions and trillions are managed, right? But if you're sub-institutional grade, right, you don't get the money. You may get their attention. They may put you into the interesting but not investable box, okay? And it will take time to get out of there. So find the right investors and have the right strategies to sell to those investors, right? Who actually write tickets to funds of your size, right? You have to master investor-centric marketing. You have to leverage digital engagement, mastering pitch and communication strategy. So this is what Don said, right? All the guys who never trained themselves on how to pitch, right? We also have a one video where we help a manager with very simple changes to how they present themselves, right? And uh, getting 5 times more meetings. Same fund, but 5 times more meetings. So I have to give you more context. So I developed this with a capital raising platform, always in Miami in January. There's a big event, capital raising, etc. So we did an experiment. I took a fund who was participating at this conference, and we made an experiment. So when they pay up for the conference, they can approach 100 investors. They have 100 arrows in their quiver. They can't send an invitation to 2,000 investors, only 100. So every single one of those 100 counts. So we did an A/B test, right? I said, well, for A, for the first 50%, you send those people the same text you have always sent to solicit a meeting in that CAP intro conference, okay? For the B guys, the other 50, you use my text, okay? So the 50 people who use my text, right? The manager got 5 times more meeting. Again, it's the same font, it's the same deck, it's the same tear sheet, right? Just the 3 paragraphs that the guy sees first, okay, were different. Because when I ask investors at these events, right? Oh, Fred, how do you actually scan your 100, 200 invitations, right? Because I know the morning they open up the scheduling system, Fred, the allocator, wakes up and he has 100, 200 meeting requests. So do you think he is looking at all of the decks and tear sheets and makes an analysis? No. Split second decisions, okay? Because they have looked at hundreds of funds already, so they know what they look for, and these are split second decisions, right? And if you change the 3 paragraphs, you may get 5 times more investor meetings, okay? Right. So, right. Lots of stuff, lots of stuff. There's another technique how you get investors open up your attachment, right? We got 54 of these guerrilla tactics, etc., right? We got case studies, da da da. Bonuses, bonuses, bonuses. This is a super, super bonus. I already mentioned this. I want to mention bonus 4 again because this is based on pure science, okay? So you go to a conference, and at some conferences, it's pretty clear who is an investor and who is not. So now obviously you want to talk to this investor. And there is actually a scientific method, there is a process, right? And it's 2F3S. So this is an acronym. It's actually 5 things you need to do. 2 of them start with an S and 3 of them start with an S, right? So 5 things you can do, right? And you can approach any investor, anyone, even in dating. This absolutely works brilliantly. And the more you use it, the more easier and the more natural it gets. So I have seen, because I go a lot at conferences, right? I see there are some people who are really, really good at approaching strangers, and they are actually capable to really work the entire room. They are relentless because they figured this out. Okay. Right. So that's also included in that course, right? You see how super targeted that is. Oh, now this is another killer. Okay. I need to look at the chat. Right. Okay. Guys, I need to mention that, but because this is the killer. I get always asked, okay, Matthias, I know every investor I should talk to is probably on LinkedIn, right? Even if you identify someone from Danielle's database, right? You still want to connect with them on LinkedIn, etc., right? So, how do I go about it, right? I haven't cracked LinkedIn. And if you look at the typical guru advice, like send 100 connection requests a day, right? Just look at anyone who titles family office. It really doesn't work, right? It also doesn't work posting motivational quotes. It also doesn't work comment on the first 10 posts in your feed. So this is the stuff that usually shows up. It also doesn't work to really connect with allocators, okay? It doesn't work sharing personal life stories, vulnerable moments. Yeah, this is all good, but it doesn't really help you. It's not targeted, right? They're posting daily to stay visible, no, right? You also don't need a flood of personal, professional photos, etc., right? Also, the guru advice tells you, oh, you need likes, shares, and impressions, right? This is actually social media vanity, right? You don't want to fall into that trap, okay? Rather, have a look at what I call a double tap, my double tap strategy to connect with allocators. Because number one, you need to identify the right allocators, okay? And there's also a science to that, and many people do it wrong. Okay, and then you need to systematically approach those guys in a way that they will actually take you seriously. So if you look at my LinkedIn, I probably can't accept you because I'm already at 30,000 direct connections. So I've totally fine-tuned this. My LinkedIn network is one of the finest. Um, with Danielle, I have thousands of shared connections, right? With everyone who is serious in the LinkedIn or in the family office industry, I have thousands of shared connections because, yeah, over the years, I've done a good job. So I'm sharing my recipe, my double tap strategy to really help investment managers, right, to broaden their contact base and to really start a dialogue with these people. And you don't, and this is the good news, you don't need a lot, okay? How many do you need? 10, 20, okay? So it's about really finding your tribe. You need to find the 10, 20, or 30, right? That you can actually engage with, that will appreciate what you do. And you need to give them the right content and the right value add, etc. So that's the Uber bonus here, right? So then you go here, Bitly deal grab now, right? There is a save now. This is the coupon that will save you exactly $500. So the whole thing actually, it's not even 4 digits. The whole thing starts at 999. Super cheap, right, for what you get. I've got loads of testimonials, okay? Right. So don't be there, right? Really work on everything, okay? And now I want to come back to this. But before I come back to this, right? I told you, don't just fizzle out, right? End on a positive note. So my positive note for you is, look, guys, you absolutely totally, right, deserve success. I see there are still the same number of people in this room like at the beginning. So this is astounding, right? All of you have a super, super high commitment. You really want to do it. You're really out there to learn, right? You're working with Danielle and others, okay? And so um, the way how I want to end this before we go into the Q&A and the interactive and everyone can turn on the camera, the way how I want to end this is really, I want to wish you real success and I want to really, really support you because I know that if you are Danielle's client, okay, and I know only Danielle's clients are in this course today, in this webinar, right? You are really committed, okay? And you're committed because you already worked so hard, right? For what you do in your strategies, in your marketing, in your expertise, right? So you've been doing this for years. So you've earned success also on the fundraising side, right? So I will do everything to support you here, right? Because you've deserved it, right? So that's my positive ending. Coming back now, how to crack the institutional market, right? So this is my latest addition to my online course. Okay, super brand new. So it's a 10-page exclusive guide how to actually crack the institutional market. So if you're there, if you're at 100 million or close, right, which is really the institutional minimum, okay, the institution will look at exactly 94 requirements that you need to bring to the table. 94. And these are in 16 dimensions, right? From organizational operations to financial stability, up to culture, right? I mentioned that, the partnership mindset, and do we like them and all of that. 16 dimensions, right? On top, you get 35 life-saving due diligence recommendations, right? We give you a list of 9 red flags that will cause instant rejections. They will totally disqualify you, so make sure not to do those, right? And then I've just put one of the latest quotes in there. We regret not having spoken to him earlier. Okay, so I'm here for you. Stop my presentation now. Turn on your cameras. And Michelle, sorry, I was so focused on my presentations.
You did
Maybe you looked,
amazing. No,
yeah,
and people were dropping questions in the chat, and we may have
yes,
a shy group. Not everyone wants to be on camera. So
exactly.
for those that have stayed and have questions, well, let me know. You can raise your hand. We can promote you to a panelist very easily, and that way you can turn on your camera, you can introduce yourselves, and that way just make it a little bit more interactive.
Okay, so you can
Yeah.
think of new questions. I go very quickly through the ones that I see here, right? So at what stage do you recommend sharing your deck? I mean, as early as possible, okay? So, I mean, I do part of my course is actually a deck review as
Mm,
early as possible, right? Because remember, you may only have one chance to talk to this one investor in 250 trading days, right? So every meeting counts as early as possible. So we often start with that because it also gives me the the background where the manager is and where can I create the biggest and the quickest leverage, etc. Right? So deck review is part of the all-in bundle, etc. Right? So give, ask, etc. Right? That's it. Very, very good. So the interview method, right, makes sense, etc. Yep.
here's
Where's the
one from
question?
Manish.
A
Thank you, Manish.
tokenization of funds. Look, this is a technical question, right? I think it probably makes sense, but also review all the projects that are happening right now, right? Look at all the people who've already done it. But my focus is really pitching, getting the meetings closing. Okay. So yeah, go into every meeting with a few good questions, etc., right? But also target those questions. What allocators also don't like if you ask them the wrong questions. Okay, they will totally get it. Okay, so be smart again and prepare for every meeting individually. All right. Yeah, elite athletes, etc. That's correct. Yes, continuous improvement. So is there,
There's a
I'm looking
few
for a
that
question. Do I
almost
miss a question, Danielle?
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6, and I'm trying to promote these people to panelists so that they can actually turn their cameras on. But yes, if you go to the bottom, you'll see a few. And here's Melissa. Great to see you, Melissa.
Yeah, hi, Melissa.
We've got you muted, but I'm gonna prompt you to unmute. And hey, Kate, lovely to see you both. Melissa, you were on first. Fire away.
Okay, so I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you, Matthias. It was really, really beneficial and enlightening. And I've got lots of tips and things, so I appreciate you taking time to be with us. So thank you.
Sure, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Um, so what are the best marketing strategies for managers without being invasive but professional at the same time? So look, the best marketing strategies are actually you have to find the right investor, okay? That's number one. Super important. So who is really at your level? Where I go at that capital raise ladder, and it really depends on where are you, how many assets you have, etc. And then you have to work on your story, work on the benefits, right? Have the again the hero is the investor, not the product, right? So if you change that, um, that will change the whole conversation. So you see, this is not so. I have a few very subtle tips like a fixed template, not too many ideas, try to get a nod with every slide, etc. So this already is super, super powerful. And really, you can't trick the allocator, right? So this is not about tricking or about manipulating or no, 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 right? You have to be authentic. Okay, people look for authentic partners that they can develop trust in. So it's in the end is does the allocator have the conviction that you are the right partner for them? That's it.
Matthias, Kate has joined and she has a
Kate,
question.
yes.
Hello, thank you, Danielle. First of all, this is beautiful. I love what I hear you saying is that we're really professionalizing this process. And I absolutely love that. So my question for you is this, with respect to storytelling, I love the idea of the hero being the investor. With respect to storytelling, are we trying to bring the investor into the story based on what they're already investing, based on their thesis? How deep are we getting into our story? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the story, you have to be careful not to be too sleazy, okay? The story has foremost be about you and your benefit and your value add, okay? And then the tie up is ideally coming from the investor. Yeah, I can see how this is working, right? You see? You want to be, of course, you have researched the investor, right? Because some investors are very, or you can research, right? Are they more looking for yield? Are they more looking for diversification? Are they looking for technological leadership, right? You get a feeling what they are looking for, right? And then, if you like, you can basically adapt a bit your positioning and your story, right? But then, don't be too sleazy. You present your story, and then ideally the investor said, "Oh yeah, that could fit in. I can see how this works." Right?
Very nice. Thank you so much. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah.
Thanks for the question and joining. I know, Blake, you are free. You are a panelist if you want to turn your camera on, but he asked, what's a good rule of thumb for prep time for each meeting? It's a good question.
Yeah, prep time for each meeting. Look, number one is, the more meetings you have done, the better you become. The more meetings you have done with different investors, the easier it is for you to basically, let's call it sniff out or identify the current status and the mindset, the emotions, etc. of the investor. It's all those subtle things, right, that they teach you, right? There's something called NLP where you learn how to really observe and how to mirror, right? So if the guy is leaning back, maybe you also should lean back at the beginning and not go full into his face, etc. Right? So there are subtle of There are some behavioral things that you will learn or should learn over time, etc. And so I think you should take at least before a meeting, at least half an hour to research the person and the institution, at least. I mean, ideally more. And when I say ideally more, I try to find people who have already done business with this institution, who have already met with them. So you can now tell me, what type of person is this and what does he or she like, etc. So this is all fair, right? We can take shortcuts. But of course, we have to stay authentic. So if one friend tells us, well, this guy is an absolute golf freak, right? And, we do, I don't know, water polo, right? I mean, we should stick to water polo, right? And, and, and not play tricks. I just see a question from Manish, right? Only able to raise capital from local investors as they go in person to check the asset property and get convinced, okay? Okay, this is very good. Okay, so this is what I'm recommending everyone. So this is what my friend Brian Johnson is also telling all managers, right? You can save 90% of your marketing costs if you actually start where you are, okay? And really market to the investors around you where you don't need to pay a hotel or a flight or everything. So keep doing that. There is a very easy thing that I also teach, and most people actually, they don't think of the simplest things, okay? So I'm telling everyone, you need to do once a year a client event. So if you have clients, do a client event, okay? Try to get a little bit of a budget for it. And if you have a little bit more of a budget, try to get an interesting speaker, okay? Maybe you get somebody for free, okay? An interesting speaker who serves like an attraction. And then you do the following. Okay, you invite all of your existing clients and you tell them, oh, you can actually bring a friend, okay? And you can put yourself in a position where they basically almost are urged to help you out, right? You can say, Fred, we have about 20 investors, but the only room we got is actually from 40. So I thought, if every investor actually brings a friend, who may also be interested in our strategy, I think we'll all have a great time, right? Wouldn't that be a great idea? And then he says, yeah, of course, I'll talk to your fund to that other guy already, right? So try to do those little things. And if you have 20 investors or 10 or 5, and everyone brings, another guy, this is the best intro that you can have because the existing investor is already speaking for you, right? And if he wouldn't be a happy investor, he wouldn't come. So we are assuming he's an happy investor. So he brings his friend, right? He is already, your spokesperson, etc. So there are very, very simple things you can do. And then to really come now to your question, how can you replicate that? You do trips, okay? You do marketing trips. Okay, but only start doing this after you've really harvested everyone in your current footprint, right? And then you do marketing trips, and then you also go through relationships and introductions, etc. Okay, introductions are the most helpful. Good. So, do you advise pitch deck to be deal-based or fund-based or both? Okay, so a pitch deck should always explain the firm, the fund, the strategy, okay? And of course, it depends if you offer a certain co-investment opportunity, you should still highlight your expertise, your strategy, what's your edge, what's your niche, why should they trust you, why is this now a good opportunity, and then you have the deal. So it's basically the same format. Okay, Manish, are you still there? Makes sense?
Made sense to me. Thank you.
Okay,
Awesome. Well, my goodness, that
good.
hour and a half flew by. I can't believe we're kind of up to 2:30 here now. I know, Matthias, you have wonderful things to share with the audience. So what I'll do is I'll send out a recording to everyone that registered because I know not everyone could attend in person, and I'll include. Yes, thank you. I love that you've pulled this up, and this is also a great marketing example for everyone who's still here. Just a QR code always makes it so easy.
Oh, you know what, Danielle, let me stop this, okay? Because
Yeah.
um, you know, ah, you've seen the testimonials, right? So people
Yeah.
telling me, God, I should have talked to this guy before, right? Is there any questions? Yeah, we'll contact you soon. Is there, so Danielle, so I have opened up a cohort, right? 10
Oh,
places.
wonderful.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
new cohort. So we have 10 places in an all-in bundle. That means 10 people can have the one-on-one with me, right? Um, do you have any specific question? Is anyone interested? Does anyone think, okay, that really makes sense, right? I really have the impression if I work with somebody, right, who actually knows all the success recipes, right, who has compiled 27 videos and 92 workbook pages and 54 guerrilla tactics, etc., and also actually gives me the opportunity to basically mirror, right, back. Look, I've done this. I'm doing this, right? Do you think this works, or should I maybe wiggle it a little bit? I'll tell you, probably you have to wiggle it a little bit because otherwise you would be at a 1 billion, okay? And we wouldn't be here. So I'm telling you, probably all you guys need to wiggle something, right? And we should not hold back, okay? We should not hold back. So here's a proven system, right, that really helps you to develop a sustainable and successful investment management business. And it's very synergetic with what Danielle has, right? So you have this wonderful pool, right, that you can approach. But what you don't want, you don't want to spam people, right? You want to take each one individually, find the ones, right, that are the low-hanging fruits where your chances of success and getting answer and engagement are the highest. And, don't burn your name. Okay, so don't go out and spam people and just send stuff without a proper introduction. Okay, let me tell you a couple of facts, okay? Because this is what people totally get wrong, okay? Totally get wrong. So let's look at hedge funds. 96% of every dollar in the hedge fund industry goes to managers that are 5 billion or bigger, okay? Are you still there? Am I still here?
You're still here.
Yeah.
I figured
Okay.
I'd give you the stage.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you, Danielle. So, okay, so 96% of every dollar in the hedge fund industry went to 5 billion plus managers. Okay, this is a little bit turning now. People are getting interested in smaller managers again. Let's look at VC. 75 of all VC dollars in 2024 went to three states: California, New York, and Massachusetts. Okay. 2% is the percentage of institutional allocations going to managers with less than $100 million. Okay, just 2%. Okay. Institutions call 31 references on average, family offices 8. Okay. Family offices can be a 3 month decision. You're dealing with 1 or 2 decision makers, 1 or 5 million checks. Institutions, you're dealing with an 18 to 36 month process. You're dealing with 8 people investment committees, but the tickets are 25 to 100 million minimums. Okay. So investors have become hyper skeptical and uber demanding. Allocating to a new manager takes a tremendous amount of conviction. Here's another thing. You guys all know Goldman Sachs, right?
Mhm.
So here is something that Goldman Sachs Prime Services is telling us about their clients. They say 50% of Goldman Sachs hedge fund clients. So this is not Interactive Brokers, okay? This is Goldman Sachs. That means more than the larger funds. Over 50% of hedge fund clients were out of business within 3 years of initial launch, despite performance. Okay. So another thing, KPMG said, 77% of hedge funds tap out their investor network within 1 year. Well, that doesn't happen to you because you have Danielle, but you still need the process. Here's another number. People, 42, 42, 42 is the average number of touch points,
Wow.
calls, meetings, emails to obtain an allocation. Okay.
Wow.
This is from Eaton Partners, a global placement agent. Okay. Here's another thing. Less than 2% of single family offices source managers via platforms. Okay. Schwab platforms and this stuff. Less than 2%. Okay. 97% of single family offices source managers via their personal network. You see, this is the thing. You have to break into their personal network, and there are ways to do that. Okay, there are ways to take that stranger and start a relationship with them, and get that conversation going, get that meeting. And once you have that meeting, you are already in their network because they have met you. And if you have been professional, if you have been nice, if you have the partnership mindset, and if you have a good product, right, that won't be lost. Okay. So
I have a question,
yes.
Matthias. So when it comes to, the cadence and all those touch points, how do you balance personal, handcrafted outreach versus CRM kind of brand building awareness? Do you recommend a combination of both, one over the other?
Oh no, certainly you have to use a CRM and you have to
Hmm.
use technology, right?
Hmm.
In anything you do.
Available.
Also, let's say another thing I haven't even talked about is a content strategy. Okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
because over 60-70% of people say, of allocators say, content is really, really relevant to really get conviction about a manager. They really have to understand how they think, how they judge things, etc. And then with content, you also need a CRM. You need to see who's opening up the stuff, etc. And then if your CRM tells you, this guy has opened up your stuff, 5, 10 days in a row or 10 times in a row, right?
Hmm.
Go and
Those
call. Try,
analytics.
right? Yeah. So the analytics are super, super important.
Uh-oh, we froze. I was I had a burning question to ask what CRM he uses. Matthias, I don't know if you can hear us, but we have frozen. I don't know if you want to try turning your camera off and then back on. But I'm not frozen. You all can hear me. Well, I know we were coming up on the end of our time. I feel like this is just scratching the surface as we're getting into content and, the email communication. Those are the hardest parts. So we may have to plan a version 2. There we go. You're
Yeah,
back.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't do this is also what allocators tell me. Don't do the thing like approaching this investor saying, "Oh, I'm in Geneva tomorrow. Can we go for a coffee?" The
Right.
allocator goes, "Well, I don't know you. We don't have a
Yes.
relationship, right? I mean, come on, right?
Yes.
Right?
Like
You have to
I'm.
be very clever. So it's a combination. It's really knowing how to turn a stranger into a friend, right? It's a bit really like dating. You have to be smart about it, okay? And then use technology as well.
Mhm. And this was a question I was curious. Have you had a favorable experience using one technology, one CRM over the others? Is there anything you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have recommendations. I know people who really do a good job with HubSpot, right?
Hmm.
So I'm working with a company where I know, right, that they have set up HubSpot solutions for managers and for small managers, etc., right? So we can have a conversation, reach out to me. Uh, Danielle, you will send out my deck to the people, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So you all get the deck, you can all contact me, etc. So HubSpot, there is, I'm sure you know Paul Das from ProFund.
Yes.
So Paul is a friend. So I know Paul when he started. I was, when Paul had a little bit of a rough patch in his business, I actually lent him money to get going, and now he makes more money than I. So Paul and ProFund is also a recommendation, because that's also something that was created for investment managers. Yeah.
Well, incredible. Well, I'll make sure, maybe Matthias, I'll get with you to make sure I have the most recent deck. I will send that
Yeah.
out along with the recording. And I can't thank you enough. I learned so much. It's just incredible. You have to be emotionally intelligent. There's so much psychology involved in really being able to engage in a thoughtful way. So your years of experience and expertise have really helped. And it's so important to just get these reminders about the system and the discipline it really takes. So
Right.
thank you so
Right.
much.
Can we come back, Blake, right? Blake, are you still there? He sent me a question. So if someone opens up email consecutively, what's a recommended follow-up? You know,
Mm,
um,
Great question.
you have to know, what does the guy know about you?
Hmm.
Okay? And is there anything that you can now offer him that he hasn't gotten so far? Okay? So maybe you can invite him to a webinar that's interactive, right? Or maybe you can invite him to, let's say, a client call, right? You say, look, I usually don't do this, but I think I've seen you've been following us now for half a year, 1 year, 2 years, etc. I think it's time for me to really take you seriously and invite you to a client call, right?
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
see, it's the little, make it human,
Yes,
okay? Make it
absolutely.
human, make it authentic, make it heartful, okay? And then, it has a much higher likelihood than some weird engineering.
100%. Yep. Especially in the world of family offices, they're so relational. And so we remind people do business with people, and you've got to
Exactly. And
connect with the
here's
heart and
look,
earn that
here's
trust.
another thing. Here's another thing, right? With all the AI and the large language models, today anyone can become an expert in anything. There are so many fake things showing up, so many fake gurus and whatnot. You have to be honest and show up as a human being, and show up with your expertise, and show up with show up with the decades of work and all the stuff that you've learned, and showcase that. Because now we actually, and this is the same for me too, right? Because anyone can go to the internet and say, well, I'm doing a webinar tomorrow. What can I teach people about fund marketing? But they
Hmm.
haven't done it, right? This is
Right.
why I told you, look, I go back to Peter Thiel 2005, right? Because,
Yes.
and I go to conferences all the time. This is real.
Right.
This is authentic. And this is not coming from a machine. And
Yes.
so I'm doing this on purpose, right? I'm doing more of these talks because and this is the same thing for investment management, right?
Mhm.
If you have an edge, if you have a niche, right, you need to be out there and really preaching it and letting everyone know, right? So again, tying back, find your thing that's unique about you, okay? Find that angle, right? And then hammer it out, and be it,
Amazing.
and be proud of it,
I love it. Build that confidence. Well, thank
okay?
you so much, Matthias. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we look forward to working together in the future.
Absolutely. Right,
All
Danielle.
right.
Thank you for
Thank
having me do
you.
that. Sure.
Oh, my
Bye-bye.
pleasure. Thank
Bye,
you so
everyone.
much. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.